going to go across to my colleague Shivani, who is at CII, and she has two leading India Inc. CEOs with her. So go ahead, Shivani.
Thanks a lot for that, Zaka. Barely any time before the Finance Minister's speech, so I'm going to keep it brief and I'm going to talk to Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, Director General, CII, and also Mr. Kamal Bali joining us, President and MD, Volvo Group India, also CII Southern Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Limited time, so I'm going to touch upon the concern points. Mr. Banerjee, coming to you first, there's been a concern about private participation and private investment. When is that cycle going to kick in, and what can the government do to boost that sentiment?
So, good question. Private sector, my first answer to your first part of the question is private sector has started kicking in. I'm seeing new investment, fresh investments coming into many sectors. And many sectors, cement, capital goods, pharmaceuticals, one can go on. There are quite a few where we are seeing already fresh investments taking place. Number two, if you see in the private sector, the capacity utilization for almost 75% of our companies our sectors are between 75 to 100%, which is a strong indicator that new investments are coming in. And the third and the last point is what the government has done very well during COVID and post is the capex spending, which is strong. So we would like to see the capex of the government continuing at 20%, which will crowd in the private sector investment.
Mr. Bali, coming to you, how would you describe the sentiment as far as the industry is concerned? Ease of doing business, which has been a big talking point in India over the last 10 years. What do you expect mostly from the Finance Minister today?
So I think, first of all, the sentiment is very positive, and you all know that India is in spotlight for many reasons now, many good reasons. I mean, when we travel overseas, we find so much of traction to the India story. People really now, you don't have to sell the India story anymore. I mean, it is already there, and therefore, so that's one good news. And second, I will completely agree with CB that the focus of the budget needs to continue as in the past years on investing in the capex for infrastructure development, because that has a multiplier effect, not only for a long-term growth of the economy, also for the current. You create jobs, you feed into the core sectors of the economy like cement, steel, and it is also a reflection to your first question, basically that leads to a huge upside on demand, which then leads to a virtuous cycle of more investments coming in, private sector kicking in. So I would personally feel that we should continue on this particular journey.
Is there a concern on the MSME front that has been voiced for quite some time, also on job creation?
No, I think MSME is a very important part of the manufacturing, so there is no doubt about it. And our MSME sector has been fragile over many years, though they are improving in a good way, because the world is shifting at a very fast pace in terms of new technologies, in terms of disruptions in the whole business model. So we have, and at CII we are doing a lot of work in this direction, and I think this is a very important point you raised, and I think there should be some very specific initiative which the CII can run for the government in the interest of MSMEs, and that's one area that should be a focus area too.
So your thoughts on MSME plus job creation? There's been a lot of criticism about this being jobless growth.
So, MSME is a sector which will employ, which is an employment generating sector. Now, while the large companies, we have good results, we are seeing opportunities, but today, as was mentioned by Kamal, there is a need for MSMEs to graduate or rather digitally transform themselves. There are new technologies, new issues. So access to financing so that these the MSMEs could really focus on digital transformation, technology adoptions, etc. is required, and therefore support to the MSME sector is important. A lot was done earlier also for the MSME sector, but with the changing nature, when they need to be also linked to the large industry on the supply chain and the global world. So there is a need for buttressing that. And coming to the issue of jobs, as you said, MSMEs can create a large number of jobs, but jobs MSMEs are also linked to a lot to the rural non-farm sector, the non-agricultural rural sector, so to say. So if we are able to encourage them into those areas, I think we will see a lot of jobs coming both in the rural India, which is important, and also in the MSME sector.
Speaking of rural India, demand has been muted. Do you think something particularly needs to be done about that?
So I would think that the budget the interim budget would focus and would need to focus a lot on the rural sector, farmers, very, very critical and important focus on irrigation technologies. Today what's happening is a lot of, tools could be used, especially technology again, AI, etc., weather forecast, seeds, research on agriculture. All of that is going to be very, very critical. And I think the rural sector, the rural demand and the rural sector, and through the direct tax intervention of income tax, there could be a lot.
You mentioned direct tax. I wasn't going to ask you about that, but what is your expectation? Because our viewers would be very keen to know minutes before the finance minister's speech.
So what, at every budget there is an expectation, and the expectation is that the budget is for all. And I think this time the budget should be also for all. And therefore, yes, of course, to spur demand, to spur, to really navigate through lots of challenges, money in the hands of people across all sections, especially the poorer sections, would be very, very critical and important.
This being an election year, this being a vote on count before an election, do you expect something populist to come in this budget, Mr. Bali?
I think the actions which the government has been taking, they will move, to my mind, in that direction, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is inclusive growth, they will continue to do that. I don't expect any major populist measure.
But income tax break could be greatly populist and something that has been awaited for a very long time.
I would think that the budget should be popular.
Yes.
It should be a popular budget. Popular budget need not necessarily be a populist budget.
That's well said, CV. Absolutely, I agree.
But sir, from your point of view, for example, from the Volvo Group's point of view, what have been some of the pressing points and something that you think could be addressed, should be addressed?
I think the key for all of us in the industry is how do we grow our manufacturing to occupy a much more stake in the GDP. So typically manufacturing has been is varying between 15 to 17%. We want this number to go up to 22 to 25%, because if you look at all large economies in the past, if you look at Germany, if you look at Korea, China, it's manufacturing which has anchored these economies for many, many decades. So India is going to be no different. In some ways, we jumped from agriculture to services and we skipped that middle layer of manufacturing in the past. But I'm sure, I think a huge focus has been seen, especially in the last 4 to 5 years, with the PLI schemes, with many more investments coming into the country, with all sunrise sectors coming into India. So I see a new birth for manufacturing in India. I personally believe you will see a story which is going to be a very, very strong story, as strong as services in the manufacturing sector in the next 5 to 10 years.
Now, this is something that has been talked about for quite some time. We cannot quite be the growth engine that we hope to be for ourselves and for the world without manufacturing playing a key role.
So, the manufacturing sector expansion from 15-16% to 25% would be a critical factor both for India to be in the global value chain, global supply chain. It's going to be very, very critical. And manufacturing, going back to your earlier point, manufacturing, say today we need a lot of tweaking today to see how we take into fold the success and the importance of the small and the mid-sized companies in manufacturing. They would have to play a very vital role. It's just not the large companies. Then how do we get global companies to operate here and get ourselves linked so that we develop a supply chain and then create abilities for us to actually be able to manufacture what global companies in India would be able to would be doing. So today India is an attractive destination, as was mentioned by Kamal. So we will continue to get a lot of investment, but we also need that base for them to have local supply chain established. And I think therefore we need across the chain ancillaries and small scales to develop.